What do you think is a nexus event of your life where, a la Spider-Man, where losing his uncle and
Yeah.
or like developing some form of superpowers or super weaknesses? What's the moment where you feel that it hit
Yeah.
you
Well, I think, I
harder
mean,
and it altered the personality of yours?
yeah, I mean, I think the main event that really happened in my life, and it would definitely be from a trauma side of it, was when I found out that so like I worked on the butterfly effect when I was 7. I know I've mentioned this to you before, but for anyone listening, when I was 7, I was in a movie called Butterfly Effect, um, which strangely enough starts off basically based about well, not basically, it's based about pedophile or pedophilia. Um, well, of course, when you're a child on set, you have tutors on set. We ended up befriending the tutor, like my mom and I. And I spent like 7 years. I would go over to his house. I was at his house for Christmas one time, that kind of stuff. He was, at the time, I didn't have a father in my life, or a father figure in my life, I should say. Um, and so he was that kind of father figure to me at the time. And then fast forward to when I was 14, I was filming elsewhere in Canada here, and we got a call from the RCMP, which is our like federal police force kind of thing. Um, Basically, wherever anywhere doesn't have their own police, there's the RCMP, so they're everywhere, all over Canada. So I got a phone call from a Vancouver RCMP detachment, and it was about the guy in question, the tutor, and he had 18 cases of child molestation against him. And there was things that had happened that instantly that was the flood of like, oh God, those things that I was kind of like, is this right? Were proven to not be right. Fortunately, in that situation, I wasn't abused physically all that much. There were other kids involved with him that were definitely more abused than I was, I would say. But for me, it was the mental side. It was the fact of the betrayal, and then furthermore, it was the why me, Was it just because I was that actor or whatever, or was he trying to groom me? Was that a thing, And that's when really like everything changed. That's when the fame became more of a burden. That's when my life became more of a burden, because obviously I was dealing with so much behind the scenes, but then I still had to put on that smiling face and be that person for everyone in front of me. That really, like, my struggle started, I would say. And then that's when the self-reflection, it was a few years I was, got into alcohol and drugs and everything around the age of like 14. Like grade 8 for us is when I got into all that stuff. And it advanced to harder stuff, and that's when there was a point where the partying, luckily in my point, it didn't ever turn into a bad thing, but for me the partying, it became less of a party, and instead whenever I was high on whatever substance, I would just talk about life and talk to people and talk about things. And that's where my crazy, you know, inebriated drug mind would go, was into the like self-reflection. I would sit in the corner at a party and be high as hell, just being like, what am I doing with my life? Um, and then even furthermore, like that is something that I deal with. I wish I could say that I didn't think about that guy in question at least once a month. I would think, I hope, even now to this day, my mom absolutely hates herself for that. She believes she gave her child to the devil, basically. She was the one that said, sure, go over to this guy's house. I trust him, and so on, right? And so it didn't just affect me and my life, it affected her life. It still does to this day. Um, and obviously, it affected a lot more people's lives that were involved with him. But again, I'm just glad that I came out and I'm here and I'm able to have these conversations with, people like yourself, because just as easily not be here. I could just as easily be dead. I could just as easily be, God knows where, broke and, on the streets or whatnot, right? So yeah, I think if anything, that is the one moment that I'm able to look back on and look at how it has affected my life over the years and really hopefully I've learned the most from that, and really about more about myself and again, how to love myself and not look for that, Sadly enough, maybe if I wasn't looking for a father figure at that time, then I wouldn't have had that. But did I need a father figure at that point? Who knows, Yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that's the one. I mean, I'm sure there's others if I thought about it, but like I said, the one moment that has had the most impact on my life, whether it's good or bad or both or everything in between, that's the moment for sure.
Um, I've written some books about trauma, and trauma is a really expensive psychological phenomenon because your many different belief systems collapse at the same time, and they stay collapsed until rebuilt, until
Mhm.
certain answers has been found. And one of the most difficult ones in regards to trauma is abuse, I feel. And
Mhm.
particularly when people try to find an answer to the question, why me? And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
why did
Well,
why
it's one of
didn't
the worst mental
why
things ever for sure. Yeah, it's like
yeah. And that's like
because
usually
they're
people, yeah, exactly.
because it's something that there's no answer for. Like there really is no answer for it. And well, I mean, he would probably have an answer for me, but I'm never going to learn that and I don't want to learn that answer. But yeah, like I said, and like I said, it's come out obviously more now as well that abuse itself comes in many different ways. And for me, like I said, I wasn't necessarily physically abused all that much at from him, but the mental abuse was just as bad, and or not even, if not even worse, I should say. um because then yeah, like again, I who knows, maybe therapy would have helped at that time, maybe counseling would have helped at that time. I did actually end up, I think when I was around 15 or 16, going to counseling. We had like a free kind of just like youth outreach center in my hometown, so I started going there, and that again, it was just nice to be able to talk about whatever at the time, right? um and I'll always remember actually, and maybe this was another moment when I kind of realized that my thought process was a bit different than most people my age. Was uh My counselor had asked me randomly one time. She was just like, so this is something that she was like, I asked this to all the kids that come in here, and of course I was, probably one of the only kids that was only there for my own shit going on, where all the other kids were like, little shitty kids. They were like skipping school and doing drugs and stealing cars or whatever. They were just kind of those people that then they were like, you need to go to counseling to work out your issues. Where I was there like voluntarily, I just wanted to go and have someone to talk to that wasn't a family member or anything, just that third party that could just listen, right? And she was like, if you were to wake up one day and your life was perfect or the day was perfect, what would that look like? And as like a 15-year-old, I was like, well, I was like, every day that I wake up, my life is perfect. My day is perfect. But then I walk out my bedroom door and I'm in the real world and nothing's perfect, and it like, she was speechless because she was like, no child, no teenager has ever said anything remotely like that. They're like, oh, my life was perfect. I'd have a Ferrari and I'd have 100 grand and gold chain, but and they start listing off these dream world things that they have. But even at the age of 15, I was like, that's just unrealistic. And it was like, Jesus, like, why are you saying these things? Just be normal, quote unquote, right? But again, I think that was because at that time I was in an industry, I was in somewhere where really like I was a prisoner to my own thoughts. more or less, because nobody around me understood. So even if I tried to explain what was going on in my life, you know, especially about the trauma I was going through. If I tried talking to my mom about it, she didn't even want to hear about it because it obviously affected her too. So there was no like, oh, mom, this is what I'm going through, because she'd be like, I don't, because she felt she was the one to blame. Um, so yeah, yeah, I don't know. I don't even remember what question you asked me now, but I'm gonna have an emotional hangover after this one. I already know.
Well, I can see sometimes you don't answer me after our calls, and I feel like I
Yeah.
am partly to
Oh
blame.
my
As
God, damn,
like,
leave me alone for
talking
like a
to that
week,
guy
man.
comes with a price. No, but it's
No, well, it's funny because I'm actually going to be doing another podcast in a couple weeks here that is all about mental health and everything too. And so this is a good warm up, a good warm up for getting into it with other people too that I don't know as well. I have no problem chatting with you because I love you and you're an
yeah,
amazing person. And that's the thing, is talking with you about it, someone who understands maybe not the acting side of it, but you understand the mental side of it, and the
yeah,
just and the psychology behind it, right? So it's like, having conversations with you, I love it because it helps me bring it out and think about this stuff that maybe I haven't really thought about before.